Today we're going to be looking at 5 underrated jewellery photography ideas to help you get your shots to stand out more. Yep, if you're new here, hi, I'm Robyn from Robyn O'Brien Photography and Robyn's Academy, and I'm here to help you learn how to take photos that you're proud to share and hopefully make you a little bit of money in the process. If you've ever scrolled through Pinterest looking for that all-important inspiration on how you're going to photograph your jewellery product, then I'm pretty much guarantee you're going to come to a shot at some point and go, how did you think of that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about shots that consistently work across the board. Now, the reason why I say consistent is because if you have an Etsy shop or Shopify or eBay, it doesn't really matter where you are, having a consistent approach about how you tackle your photos, having that plan is important. Some of these might seem really simple, but trust me, they're going to make your photos look amazing. The first thing we look at in the Academy when we look at taking product shots is how we're going to display it. What is the goal? There are obviously 5 different types of photos that you can take. And if you don't know those, you need to go and check out the video of must-have photos. But today we'll be looking about how you can take that to the next level. The first idea is thinking about experimenting with different props. Obviously, you can go with the traditional stand, and for certain types of jewellery like necklaces, these are an absolute lifesaver. However, you can take it to the next level and again, experiment. I can't emphasise this enough. Try and think outside the box. How can you develop the story? Planning out your shot to include things like if you use very natural materials, then using natural materials in your photos will emphasize that story for you. One of my favorite ways to display earrings is actually either on glass or a plant. This shot of earrings on a leaf absolutely works a treat, simply because it shows how delicate and how light they are, because if it wasn't light it would obviously be pulling it down and things like that. It really gives you that kind of delicate approach to it. It gives you a natural approach and it really helps them stand out. Obviously you can use this in a variety of different ways. You could put it on a twig, you can put it on a branch of a tree, especially if you want to get that contrast of colour, okay? Particularly in Perfect Products, we discuss a lot about the psychology of marketing, using composition to draw the viewer in, and colour psychology is absolutely huge for product photos. So being able to pick out the right colours for your backgrounds and your props is an absolute essential. For those of you who are wanting to add a little bit of colour into this, if you've got a particular colour, you can colour coordinate things simply by hanging your earrings on a glass. Not only does this help with delicate, it helps the hanging nature of them, but it helps you to build layers within your photos. This is important because it does draw the viewer in, and by adding that extra layer, you can then put something obviously behind it which will complement your story. Hanging necklaces is an absolute treat of mine. I really like long necklaces. I tend to only stick to the one I'm wearing at the moment, but I do have some longer ones. And one of the absolute favourite ways I've seen this is an empty picture frame. It allows you to hand multiples, so if you've got variations or if you've got a collection, it works an absolute treat. And actually it makes it really, really pretty, and you can actually use it as a focal point in your bedroom. So not only is it decorative and, you know, home style, it's practical at the same time. So using hanging necklaces is an absolute must. Rings are an absolute pain to photograph, and I only ever really use 3 ways to photograph rings now. On something, on a cone, and I love the concrete cones. The concrete props that are available on Etsy at the moment are an absolute must for anyone out there who does jewellery, because they're an absolute lifesaver when you've got no light, no idea of what to do. They are absolutely perfect. This particular shot, the reason why this one works so well is you've got the natural wood, you've got the beautiful complementary pink concrete cone with it, which blends into that beautiful of that rose gold. It absolutely works a treat. It gives the emphasis on the jewellery, and you've got the rule of odds, which just helps it from a composition point of view. I have no issue with this shot. I think it's a really nice one to demonstrate just how easy it can be to use something. The other absolute favourite I have for rings is to just stand them up. Okay, I do have a trick for this, and if you want to know what that is, then pop it in the comment below and I will tell you exactly how I make my rings stand up perfectly every single time with no issues on an edit. It couldn't be simpler. It really couldn't. especially if you have like complementary ones like wedding rings and you want them to kind of overlap and interlink and things like that, this is an absolute must. Having a beautiful bokeh dot background, you can't ask for anything else. It really is simple. Learning photography can really increase your sales because you're building a story, not just taking a shot. And if you can take your viewer on that journey, you'll build an emotional response. As we know, people buy from an emotional response rather than seeing a perfectly detailed shot. Experimenting with colour, as I talked to you before, colour is absolutely huge. The psychology of colour, making sure you use the complementary, but also using a little bit of contrast and using it to help do things like leading lines. The reason why there are certain colours that work well with jewellery is because it promotes an aspect of luxury, and we associate that with it. So therefore, if we think it's luxury, we think it's expensive, we think it's worthy. When you experiment with colour, contrast can be a big game with this, but also you're working on those analog colours can also, because you have a little bit of contrast, but it shows they go together. The reason why this shot particularly works is you have a beautiful triangular diagonal line. You've got the gap for the necklace. The colours go really, really well together. The green absolutely totally makes the white gold or silver stand out. It works. I have no issue with this whatsoever. I think it's a really nice, intelligent way of doing it. Alternatively, like I said, if you want to do the analog approach, simply using different tones or different shades of the similar colour allows you to bring a bit of, again, a bit of depth to it, a bit of contrast. You've got the beautiful texture of the material from the card on this one. Leading lines, simple but effective. Remember, it's all about establishing what your story is and how you want to approach it. Now, obviously, when we talk about colour, we then have to talk about more interesting ideas. One of my favourite things to do is reflections and ripples. Reflections for jewellery just works because there's, it's metal and they reflect beautifully. Nice gloss surface and getting that mossy. Go as far as a mirror. There are some really cool tricks where you can use your a mirror on your laptop screen and then you can project whatever background you want. Literally, it's limitless what you could then put in the background. This is how a lot of people get things like the smoky backgrounds or the light effect, different lighting effects on the back. They simply put it on their screen. They put a mirror. They put the jewellery in, especially for things like rings and bracelets. Works an absolute treat for those. Ripples is my new one. I became fascinated with this actually after I saw this particular image, and it has stuck with me. I was like, what an interesting way to add not only a tonal gradient, because obviously it's the colour shift. You've got a reflection, but then you've got these ripples which just automatically, that beautiful symmetry just draws the viewer in onto exactly that spiral. And of course, with the spiral of the necklace, it kind of mirrors that kind of ripple in the water. Storytelling, excellent. Lighting, excellent. You can still see all the details. I was a big fan of this. The other thing that you can do, we're not done yet. You got to stick with me, okay? If you've liked any of these so far, hit the like button, okay? These things aren't easy to demonstrate to you guys. Finally, and this is my new thing for summer, especially if you're doing like spring, summer, tropical, things like that, then one of my absolute favourite things is to get interesting with your lighting. We talk a lot in product photography about making sure that you have a nice even flat light so you can see everything. We don't want harsh shadows, and actually sometimes I like to throw that completely out of the water and do something completely different. The reason why this works so well is because the circles of the material obviously creates that harsher shadow with the side light, but it just gives you such a dimension, and it just draws you into the middle of that circle where obviously you can see things. I'm not going to say this is the easiest one to reproduce. Alternatively, You obviously have the other side of things to do where you can get more creative with your shadows simply by doing something a little bit softer, having some kind of grid. This works particularly well with things like your closer up details, so things like your smaller earrings, your smaller rings, because obviously there isn't so much that you can do with the background of that, and therefore having that set up with those beautiful different lighting techniques really helps to add that kind of depth and interest into the actual piece. Okay, that doesn't mean that other things don't work. Okay, some of the traditional approaches still work. Having jewelry on a human being will always work because you are promoting the concept of somebody wearing it. They envisage themselves wearing it. So if you can get a model to model it, that's fine. What I would say is they tend to do better on a much closer up. So get your macro lens out and get close to that person. Okay? Don't be afraid to get into personal. If you are going to do something like a collection, then what I would say is don't be afraid to tell the story behind it. Okay, collections are normally given as gifts, especially if you have a really nice special somebody in your life. So therefore stick with the holidays, you know, make it a holiday approach. This works really well because it's like she's just opened it, the ribbons everywhere. You know, you got the balls from Christmas or the holiday period. It has story, it has depth, okay, and it shows off the entire collection. You can then have different approaches to the individual items, but try and be consistent in your approach. Okay, you can't go from one psychedelic thing to another because you'll confuse your viewer. You want it to look cohesive. Pick one of these and try it out. Now, obviously, if you're wondering how to actually pull these things together, then I highly recommend you check out the Perfect Product Photos Playbook, which basically go through 10 examples of how to style and shoot them. It's as simple as that. And it won't break the bank. It's not a massive course. If you don't know how to do lighting at home, then I would highly recommend that you go and watch my DIY product lightings at home. No, go watch it, okay? It's important that you go watch it because it'll show you how to do the different types of lighting. Evidence. And if you like the new camera, will you let me know? Because I'm kind of intrigued.